Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Ultimate Plot Twist. I'm so excited for you to meet my dear friend Nicole today. Nicole is coming to us from the Midwest. I guess we don't say the Midwest, the Colorado area of the world. And Nicole and I have been friends over the internet now for quite some time. It's amazing how these internet friendships can turn into something really cool. But when we were talking a little bit about stories and about our lives, Nicole said, "Hey, I might have something that your audience needs to hear." So, Nicole, thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
And
Thank you for
Nicole,
having me.
tell me a little bit. Yeah, thanks for being here. Tell me a little bit about you. So let's get started first. So Nicole is a internet blogger. She's been doing it now for over 2 years. How did you get started in that space?
Well, the pandemic, just like a lot of people took that shift during the pandemic. My background is actually in speech language pathology. So I worked
Mm.
with adults in the acute care setting and inpatient rehab, predominantly with stroke patients and traumatic brain injured. Right before the pandemic hit, we moved to Colorado from the Detroit area. When we first moved, I was just worried about getting my family settled, and our house was under renovation. And then a couple months in, I realized, okay, it's time for me to go back to work. And I started to get my Colorado license. Lo and behold, COVID took over the world. And my husband's in healthcare. He's a general surgeon. And so he works in hospitals, obviously. And so he's like, I don't think we should both be in hospitals right now. Why don't you just wait a little bit? And then that little bit turned into a lot of bit. And so I took my passion and kind of created a space um, with my website, Touch of Stats.
Oh, it's a beautiful space, guys. So I will link her website down below, as well as you can follow her on all the socials. We'll have all the ways for you to get to her. Nicole, you're one of the most authentic people I know on the internet. Like you're always just kind of laying it
Oh,
out there. And I
thank
love
you.
that about you. And it's cool because we didn't even
Yeah.
talk about that. But even that in itself was a plot twist in your life, right? Like here you are,
Oh,
an
yeah.
internet blogger. You never expected that to
Surprise.
happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. That's amazing, though. I love that part. So
Thank
you're a
you.
wife and a mom. How many kids do you have?
We have three boys. They are
Okay.
13, 12, and 9.
Okay,
Yes.
very cool.
Mhm.
And so tell me a little bit about your boys.
So, okay, I know you're going to edit this part. Do you want personality or
Anything you want to tell me, and then
okay,
we'll move it around. So tell
okay.
me a little bit about your three boys.
Okay, so they're all very different. They each have their own unique personality, and I don't know that there's any crossover in anything.
I
My
love
first
that.
one is um, like your typical firstborn. He's, a little bit of a perfectionist, and he's my sports kid. He played hockey, baseball. What else? He's extremely empathetic. And what else can I say? I don't know. He's starting high school next year. And so,
That's
yeah,
exciting.
it is exciting. And then my second, and my first, like, he's one of those extroverted introverts. He's got a lot of
Mm,
friends, but he loves to just have his alone time and decompress.
I
And
can
then,
relate to that.
yeah, yes, me too. Um, and then my middle is my engineer. Like he has been
Mm,
building Legos since he was like 3. Um, he loves to take things apart and put them back together if he can.
mm.
Uh, he he's into fencing, and very he's very much an introvert. Like he could spend an entire day by himself,
Mm,
and he's got like a few close friends, and
mm.
that's they're very different in that respect. And then my third is a little firecracker. He loves
The baby.
attention. The baby, yes. He loves attention. He is a complete extrovert, totally feeds off other people's energy. And he's very witty and beyond his
Mm.
years for sure. And
Oh,
he's
that's
just getting
cool.
into Legos, and he's very artistic. He loves to draw, um, anything that has to do with like creating, he's right there, hands on.
Oh, that's cool. Did you know
Yeah.
did you guys always know you wanted to have children?
Yes, we always knew we wanted to have children. My husband always wanted three because he came from a family of three, and I was on the fence. I thought two was a good was was a good, even number. Um,
Yeah.
but I think working in healthcare, you just see the value in, like, I saw the value in, like, big families and being there,
Yeah.
and we both come from large families. I just didn't know if I could, um, I don't know, mentally handle it, but here I am.
Yeah.
I
No,
am.
I get
I
that.
am. Yeah. Yeah.
You are. You are.
Yeah.
Let's keep saying it and you'll believe it. I am.
Yeah.
I am.
I am.
Nicole, one of the things that I want to go ahead and just tell our audience is that I
Yeah.
know that this next part of your story you've not really shared openly. And so, first of all, I just really appreciate that you are willing and just want to say thank you
Oh,
for that
Jen.
because I know this is kind of a vulnerable moment. Oh, did you lose me?
Yeah. Colorado Wi-Fi. It just froze. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
okay. No worries. So I'll start again. So I know that this next part of the story, I want to make sure and tell our audience too, is something that you haven't necessarily openly shared in the internet space. And so I just want to first say thank you for that. And so just thank you for being vulnerable and wanting to share this with the world. But so you've kind of opened up to me. So your boys sound amazing. I love that they come into such a loving home. I stalk you on the internet, so I know you and your husband have a sweet little relationship. It's really
Thanks.
sweet. So tell me a little bit about when you first noticed that maybe one of your boys might need a little extra help.
Sure. Yes. Actually, I think my background in speech pathology kind of gave me
Mm-hmm.
a heads up on it. So when my oldest was about 15 months, I noticed he was very motor driven, had a very hard time sitting still, and then some of his milestones in terms of speech and language seemed delayed. And
Mm-hmm.
granted, it was early, but he wasn't able, he wasn't repeating sounds. And so I knew that that was a marker for something else. And at, between 15 and 18 months, kids should be able to, you know, with a typically developing speech
Right.
pattern, should be able to mimic.
Right.
And so I told my husband, and he was like, "Oh, it's nothing. Everybody develops differently." And, this was my arena. I wasn't in the OR telling him,
Right.
"Oh, that's
Right.
normal." So that was my first, that was my first clue. And then at about 18 months, when he didn't have a lot in his vocabulary, I knew
Mm-hmm.
he was understanding, but he just wasn't able to communicate. And I thought, let me just get started earlier. So that was my
Yeah.
first clue. But his his inability to even sit through a snack was something that I took note of. And I know that they say boys are more active typically. It just seemed even more so than the other kids that he was around. And so around 18 months, I had him evaluated and we started speech therapy. And then I would say at about 2.5, my mom took note. And so she's like, "Oh," because I have a sister that
Yeah.
has severe ADHD. And she's like, I think I think he may have it. You just might want to keep an eye on it." And I thought, oh, he's 2.5, but we'll
Yeah.
see because it does run on both sides of the family.
Right.
But it was really hard. I had my second son when he was 19 months, and I tried going to mommy and me classes, and all the kids were
Mm,
sitting there, um,
mm-hmm.
participating, and he was the one in the corner climbing on the wall, opening the cabinets, and trying to
Right.
redirect him. Trying to redirect him, he would just laugh and think it was a game, and
Mm,
I, you know, would get impatient. And I just found myself becoming more and more impatient than I thought I would be because I'm a pretty patient person. I'm calm.
right.
But
Right.
I started to feel like um, I couldn't be the mom that I wanted to be because I
Oh,
was so
wow.
impatient, and something just didn't feel right. Like because the behavior
Yeah.
and it wasn't like a controlling thing. It was just noticing other children at that age and what they were doing. You just,
No,
with your first, I feel
I
like you're
love
always
that.
comparing.
Right.
Um,
Right.
you know,
But I
I
love
don't
what you're
know.
saying
Yeah.
because no, I think the common thread in that is your gut was going off, right? Like your
Hmm.
mommy gut said, this doesn't feel right. And then backing it
Right.
with your background. I think it's so interesting though how young, because you're right. Boys, it does get written off,
Hmm.
oh man, he's such a typical boy. If I've heard that once, I've heard it a million times
Yeah.
just because of his rambunctiousness and stuff. But I love that you didn't ignore both your intuition, your gut, and you just leaned into it. That's really amazing and really a highlight, I think, of what you're sharing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and then so your second son comes along,
Hmm.
and you shared with me a little bit there too. Like, so
Hmm.
there were some markers in there too that maybe triggered you to think that there might be a similar path, or no? How did that work out?
Well, my second son, who also has ADHD, presented completely different. My first son was very motor driven. He was so he's a slow processor. So it takes
Okay.
he's a visual learner. So his learning style was completely different than the second one. So I didn't notice right away with my second one. I would say, um, and when he was about 3 years old, I mean, he was just the kid that sat there and played by himself for
Yeah.
hours. Almost sometimes didn't even want other people to play with him because it wasn't his way. Um, but
Yeah.
and he didn't have the like over big emotions that my first son had. But he would sit down and he taught himself the alphabet and he taught himself how to write. He took a magazine and he would trace. And so I don't know if I didn't notice it right away because he was such a quiet kid that liked to entertain himself. Um, but I did for a minute think that maybe there was something else just because he was so hyper focused. Looking back in hindsight, that would have been my first marker, just the extreme hyper focus on
Mm.
only only activities that he enjoyed, um, with like
So
the
you're teaching
alphabet.
me
Like
something there. I didn't
yeah.
I didn't know
Oh,
that to be a mark, like that it presented that way in terms of the
hyper
hyper
focus.
focus piece of, yeah, that's very
Yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Because the
That.
description of your first son, I think, is what people would lean into
Mhm.
more to have
Yeah,
that intuition.
the
But this is
hyperactivity.
a
Yeah,
different lane. Yeah,
yeah.
very different.
I almost thought he may be on the spectrum just because
Mm, yeah,
he taught himself the alphabet at such a young age and to write
right.
and was such an introvert. The more I started to research and listening to professors on podcasts and reading books, I started seeing some crossover, but I didn't. As he went into preschool and started socializing more, um, the hyper focus on certain activities kind of went to the wayside until he was a little bit older.
Okay.
So now he's the type of kid that will watch a YouTube tutorial and teach
Hmm.
himself something, and and then he's an expert at it. And so,
Wow.
my for example, my older one can't do that. It's more hands-on and more visual. But yeah,
Hmm.
hyper focus was definitely like his marker. But as he got older, his emotions got bigger. And
Mm.
then there was like a social piece. I noticed in all three of my kids, the social piece started around second grade. And so around second grade with my second, and I apologize if I'm jumping all over the place. I
Nope,
just
you're not. You're
have
good.
so many kids. Um,
Nope, you're good.
my second, who is like really calm and just has an even demeanor, was starting to have issues at school with like,
Yeah.
being aggressive with kids, like kind of yelling at them or pushing them in line. And he was just unable to self regulate. And
Mm.
that's another indicator of ADHD dysregulation. I feel like everybody has the idea that ADHD is hyperactivity,
Right.
But I think one of the key markers is dysregulation emotionally, those type of at least that's what one professor says, and I value
No,
his
that's
work.
super
Yeah,
helpful. Yeah, no, that's
yeah,
super helpful because deregulation there again, back to
hmm
you made the comment
yeah,
around the spectrum. And
yeah,
I know in my background with conversations with therapists for my
hmm
child specifically, we're always kind of watching those things and
hmm
deregulation comes up a lot.
yeah,
And so I think that's an important thing for moms and dads and caregivers to understand that present that when that presents itself, it's
hmm
not an automatic disclaimer that it
no,
fits into one of these categories. It's just
no,
a disclaimer that needs to be investigated, right? Like
yeah, right.
that's
I
the
mean, it
point. Like
could
don't ignore it.
right. It could be anxiety, and it's just presenting
Right.
itself in big emotions, because one of my children does have anxiety and
Right.
ADHD. So those emotions are like 0 to 100, but then he cools off real quick. So you're just like,
Yeah.
I'm
What just happened?
my heart's going crazy. How are you
Yeah.
calm already?
I'm not okay
Yeah,
yet.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I get that. I get that. And your
So yeah.
youngest presented as well around the same time frame or no?
Yeah, so he was younger. I would say I started noticing around 3. So
Okay.
my youngest, um, he's actually like a combination of the two. So but he's extremely verbal,
Okay.
and so his will come out in non-stop, like I use this word, it's like verbal diarrhea, where you're just like, I can't take it anymore. It's just he just has to get it out, and has to be he has to be heard. I'm not saying that that's
Okay.
ADHD, but that's just he
His
can't
personality.
control himself. Yeah, it's part of his
Mm.
personality, but he can't control himself. If he's dysregulated, he will. Um, it's just all encompassing. It's his whole it's physically, emotionally, he
Yeah.
just cannot, he just spirals. And so it's hard to watch, and it's
Yeah.
hard to deal with in public. Like that's really hard, because this is just, I feel like kids with ADHD get a bad rap because I don't think people can tell when there's like a invisible, diagnosis, and
Yep.
like to be patient. Like you're just like, well, and you don't, and sometimes when you say it, it sounds like an excuse, but
Yes.
there's a lot, you don't know what you don't know. And what I can do best for the close circle of people in my life is just explain it.
I love that.
Um, and
Well, and that's why
so,
we wanted you here.
yeah,
I think it is important
yeah,
for people to understand ADHD. So tell
yeah.
me what's been the most surprising learning for you. I like how you described it as a silent diagnosis because
Hmm.
I often, again, paralleling it to my son with
Hmm.
his little almond eyes and flat nose. I often tell people like it's hard for me that he has such an obvious mark, but
Hmm.
it's interesting when you talk about the disadvantages of a silent diagnosis. Can you
Hmm.
unpack that a little bit? Like, what have you learned about that?
Um, well, I learned that people are very impatient with
Yeah,
your rambunctious child, that you are
right.
struggling so hard to help keep an emotional, behavioral, like even tone.
Hmm.
And it's hard. It's really hard. And especially when you're out and you have all three, and their dynamics are so different.
Hmm.
They play off each other, they aggravate each other, and it's almost like the smallest little irritation that might bother, let's say, you or me, you could just brush it off. But a child with ADHD, it can just rock their world.
Yeah.
And then when you're trying to calm one down, the other one is still spinning. So it's, I don't know if I answered your question.
You did.
Did
No,
I
you
answer your
did.
question? Okay.
Yeah, no, you did.
Okay.
And so tell me this
Yeah.
for the friends that are
Yeah.
in your life, or let's
Hmm.
say if you have someone in your circle and they tell you my kids struggle
Mhm.
with ADHD, what is
Mhm.
the number one thing you would tell that friend or family member to best support that friend? Like, what's your
Mhm.
advice on how they can show up well and support their people whenever they know they're walking through something like that?
Well, I get this a lot with teachers, more so than family members, because they're in there managing a whole group of kids, and they
Yep.
just they don't know what to do.
Yep.
So I would have to say is just removing the child, if you're
Mm,
in a situation where you can, getting down to eye level and saying, I hear you. I see that you're
mm-hmm,
having a hard time. How can I help you? And
mm,
literally, it's almost like, and sometimes they're like, I don't know. And this happens a lot with one of mine in particular. And sometimes I just tell him, I don't know what I can do, but sometimes, a lot of times, a hug just really helps. And so,
yeah. Wow.
and I noticed with him in particular, when he was younger, he had a lot of sensory issues. And so he would bury himself with blankets or couch pillows. But as he's getting older, that doesn't work. So sometimes just a
Mm-hmm.
hard squeeze will help.
Mm.
Um, but a lot of times I think they just want to be heard, because I'm thinking of another child that doesn't like to be touched when I think it's just
Yeah.
knowing your own kids. Um,
But giving them a
yes, I
voice is
think,
what I'm hearing you say.
yeah,
Like, make sure you give them an
yeah,
opportunity to voice what they need in that moment, right? Like, don't
yeah.
just dismiss it or
Hmm.
ignore it, but,
Yeah,
acknowledge it, acknowledge them.
yeah, yes.
How about like if I were to love on you, Nicole, or to be there
Hmm.
for you, how could I do that in a way to support you in your journey that would be impactful, other than obvious
Yeah,
patience and listening? Because clearly people are
yeah.
not. I hate what you said about, I mean, I hate it, but it's so true
Hmm.
how people can think it's an excuse. That drives me crazy.
Yeah,
So clearly, not doing that. But
right.
is there other words of wisdom you would have on how to friend the mom who has a child with ADHD?
I think part of what comes with it is a little bit of isolation.
Hmm.
So
I get that.
yeah, a lot of times it's hard for my children to oftentimes socially be appropriate or make
Hmm.
close friends in school, especially when they're younger and they cannot control themselves. I think what kids can handle is hyperactivity. They can
Hmm.
handle, because sometimes it's fun for kids, like, to laugh and
Yeah.
be goofy.
Yep.
But what kids don't like, and this often presents in my kids, is that they seem angry. Like, that's
Mm.
how they present themselves. And
Hmm.
so other kids don't want to deal with that. And,
Hmm.
um, you know, there's oftentimes like parties. I guess maybe just being inclusive. Like, I know my kids,
Mm.
and if they have a problem, I mean, not too long ago, my youngest was invited to a birthday party, and I know that there's another boy there, and he and that boy just are like oil and water. Either they get along or they don't. And I stayed there and kind of kept an eye on it, and I just talked to the parents a little bit. But I just think being inclusive.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a very social person. I have always had like a large friend group. I
Yeah.
love I love my ladies.
Yeah.
But it is hard to bring my kids around certain things. So
Yeah. That
I
makes sense. That
yeah,
makes total sense.
yeah.
Do you think that there's a better conversation that families could have at home to educate on ADHD, or is that worse? Like in your mind, right? To help people understand, I often think sometimes it's just sheer parents having better conversations to know that
Hmm.
not like typical is not, or normal is
Yeah,
not this, right? It's
yeah.
um normal looks different for all people, and
Mhm.
I don't know. Does that ring a bell to you at all or no?
You mean having conversations with friends, family, or with my
Kids, right? So we're talking
oh,
about like other kids not always appreciating your
Yeah.
son's response to things? Do you think
Hmm.
some of it is as simple as other kids understanding that, hey, he doesn't mean anything, but, like
Yeah.
I, I think often
Yeah.
people ignore, um, they try to dismiss hard things,
Hmm.
right? Like if it's
Yeah.
uncomfortable, we don't pay attention. And I'm just curious if it's ever felt that way. Like if they would just talk about it, it wouldn't be such a big deal.
Yeah. I think it's hard because I don't know that another second grader like
Yeah, that's
truly
true.
gets it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sometimes when my kids are like, oh, he's, this kid in my school is blah blah blah, and I personally know that this kid
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
struggles with X, Y, and Z. I'll just say to my kids, not everybody is, the same, and he may be having a hard time and you don't know. And I'll give
Yeah.
them an example. I think in the moment they may get it, but I don't know that it translates. And
Yeah.
so that's
No.
hard because I think I just don't think kids get it. I think as they get older, they do, um,
Mm-hmm.
but not in those early um, school age years.
Yeah. No, that's appropriate. No,
Yeah,
I was just curious if you thought there's a better dialogue to that one.
yeah. But
Okay, tell me
I did.
this. Oh,
Oh
go ahead.
no,
Please go
when I
ahead.
was at that birthday party, there is a little boy in the class that really struggles, and I was talking with another mom because her son also has, you know, um, issues with that boy, and that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons why I stayed at the party. And she's like, "Well, this is why I stayed too." And and then she followed it up with, "Well, he needs our support." So I wasn't saying anything bad about this little boy. I was just saying like why I had stayed and that
Right.
my son, sometimes struggles. And she's like, you know, I and I felt bad because I'm like, did I come across like I'm not supporting this little boy? But she said no. She's like, no, you didn't come across that way. She's like, I was just making a statement. So um,
Yeah.
I think you know this day and age, there are some parents that are becoming more um, enlightened, I guess. I don't know if that's the
Yeah.
right word, but
No, that's
yeah,
definitely more educated,
yeah,
right?
educated,
It's
yes,
conversations. Well, it's conversations like this that are helping to educate more parents of how
hmm,
things can look different and to not be so
yeah,
afraid. Because, like I said, I think sometimes the response is rooted in fear of just not understanding it versus
yeah,
actually taking the time. So,
right,
I have a couple more questions because I want to make
sure,
sure I get the answers out of you because I think
yeah,
it'd
yeah.
be great to hear. So, what's been your biggest surprise about the support for this diagnosis, whether it's inside or outside of the school system or medically, or
Hmm.
can you talk to me a little bit about the support and what has been a surprise or maybe even something that you want to make sure other parents know is available to them?
Yeah. So my biggest surprise was not all schools are created equal in their support systems.
Amen to
And
that.
yes, we have moved around quite a bit these last couple of years from, leaving Michigan. We found a place in a city that just wasn't a good fit, so we left 3 years later. So my kids have um, been through a couple different special ed teams,
Yep.
and it's really surprising the level. Like it's just not an equal playing field. And
No.
what I know is um, what is like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like legally, what they're held responsible for. You know what I'm
Their
trying to
legal
say?
obligations. Yep.
There,
Yep.
yes. And it's almost like if you don't know, like you don't know what you don't know. But I
Yep.
literally had a conversation with someone at the school today, and I
Yeah.
said, I reached out to you in February. I thought this was an ongoing process. And I said, I'm just learning today. Because she's like, well, we can't do it because the schools. I said, but here's my email. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I dropped the ball. She goes, but we've
Hmm.
been doing X, Y, and Z to work with your son. I said, I understand. I said, but you're telling me this. And I said, but it's not documented, you know?
Mm-mm.
And so, and
Yeah.
there's nothing in place to support this kid in his next year. So we have to start this process all over again. And so
Mm.
what I think it's good for parents to know is that if you have an official diagnosis, you have the right to an IEP without going through
Yes.
certain steps. And you can,
Yep.
um, and I don't want to discredit the schools because they are helping,
No.
but
No.
there's a lot of paperwork to be done. And
Yeah.
I noticed at some schools they just don't want us, you know, let's do this, we'll try these things in the classroom, we'll see how they work. If that's not sitting well with you, you just go straight to, I want an evaluation for my son. And you have every
That's
right
right.
to do that. And
Yep.
they cannot turn you away.
No, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we learned very on is to get early on is to get yourself educated, right? And not
Mm-hmm.
because people don't want, I firmly believe in my heart, Nicole, that most of the people we've come into contact with truly do want the best, but they are a bit handcuffed to either the resources they have available to them or just
Mm-hmm.
what's happening around them. But it was shocking to me how um, there have been times had I not known what I
Mm-hmm.
could ask or what I could, it wouldn't have been just openly told to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think that's great, great wisdom, and yeah, that's very wise, very, very wise.
Yes.
And then
And you can get, what's it called? Oh my gosh, I'm at a loss for words. Is it early on?
early intervention, yeah,
Early intervention through your school district, usually
yeah,
through the preschool, at least in Michigan. I don't really know about Colorado. It may be different per state, but you can have somebody evaluate your son for or daughter for early intervention before the age of 3.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good advice. I didn't know that you could
Hmm.
do it before 3.
Yeah.
I
Because after
I
that,
want to
it's
know.
straight through the schools.
Okay, that's good to know. I want to know what's made you nervous about sharing this because I will tell you, hearing your heart. I mean, man, Nicole, you've done some amazing things to support and advocate for your kids, and they are
Thank you.
so blessed to have you in their corner. I also hear the struggle in your story, and just want to tell you, I want to make sure you're seen, and
No,
I
thank you.
love that, and more importantly, I just want to make sure that you're doing a heck of an amazing job. I mean,
Thanks.
everything you
Yeah.
said around the isolation, and
Hmm.
I feel all those things in my bones. I get it. But the fact that you've pushed through and you stay who you are is pretty amazing. So I'm really glad that you've shared so openly today about these things. Cause I think a lot of moms specifically need to hear that it can be presented early and to not
Hmm.
ignore, and it's okay, to kind of try to
Hmm.
figure that out.
Yeah.
So what are you the most proud of in your boys? Do you mind
Uh,
sharing what you love the most about them?
oh yes, yes. They're all so special, and I love them
Mm.
all. um, I would have to say with my oldest, his compassion and empathy is nothing like I've seen. And I feel terrible about this, but obviously I see it now. But when he was younger, it was very hard for me to see. It was very
Mm.
hard, and because I had 4 kids in 3 years. No, 3 kids in. I had 3 kids in 4 years.
Very quick.
That came out wrong. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yes. So Um, yeah, so I had 3 kids in 4 years and was completely overwhelmed. And I didn't have a lot of family support. So just feeling overwhelmed. And you can't really see a lot in the fog of early motherhood with that many kids. And
Yeah.
that's how I felt. And so a lot of his teachers, even in preschool, were like, oh, Tasso is so empathetic. He is so kind, and I always knew he was a sweet boy. I just never saw the level of compassion and caring like for other people when he was that little. You're just
Yeah.
juggling so many things and postpartum doesn't help
No.
and so no. So those are my two favorite things in him. And he
I love
still
that.
hugs me and holds my hand sometimes. So he's really sweet. So future wife, you're welcome. Uh, my my middle one is just man, he is so creative and so like what's the word? He just I don't know. He's so dynamic that like there are just so many facets to him that he's always learning something new. Always,
What is that?
Attention, please. May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? The management of the hotel will be conducting a fire alarm test where all audible and visual alarms will be sounding. There is no need to respond. Again, there is no need to respond.
This is good. This is good.
it's real
Hold
good.
on. There's
I think
literally a
you need to
smoke
keep
alarm
this
that's going to
in.
go off. Oh,
Okay.
this has got to make it
Attention
in.
all
Okay.
guests and staff.
Yeah.
Attention all guests and staff. The hotel
Oh,
manager
you
This is
can't
my
make
life.
that up.
This is my life.
This is my
So,
life
yeah.
too. Yes.
Audible and visual
Why wouldn't we
alarms
go through?
will sound.
There's no telling how loud
There
this is
no
going to
need
be.
to
I need to
evacuate
turn
the
this down.
building. There is no need to evacuate the
No
building.
need to
Thank
evacuate
you.
though. That's the
Oh,
good
those
news.
moms that just put their babies down for a nap.
You're ticked.
Right.
It is about that time.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Are you done? No, it's going to go off. It's got to.
Maybe that was it.
I don't want to. I don't know. I don't want to interrupt you though. Okay, we're gonna keep talking. It's probably gonna go off, and then we'll have to keep talking again. Hey, this
Yeah.
is really good.
Oh, okay.
This is really good. So it's good.
Okay. I haven't cried yet.
Nope. Okay. My
Okay.
last question's probably gonna get you though. Okay, tell me about your
Oh,
middle son.
gosh.
What do you love the most
Okay.
about your middle son?
He's just very funny and witty, and he just can like work a room, even though he's like so introverted. Like you put him in a room, and it's like he knows the assignment. Like he knows
That's awesome.
how to talk to people. He's just
I love
he's
that.
a character. He used to dress up in like ties. He wears glasses, and he's like
Oh,
these are he's like he's just a character.
that's
And he's
awesome.
very
And
sweet and thoughtful. Yeah. And the
that's
baby,
great.
oh, the
Yeah,
baby.
the
Like
baby.
he's just a little lover. And
No.
talk about a 9-year-old that has a sense of humor of like a 25-year-old. Like he
Mm,
just sometimes his inappropriate jokes are so funny. And I have to leave the room. Like it's
that's so great.
yeah.
I love
Yeah,
that.
he just he's a character.
Okay, here's
And
my
he's just so
last
full
and
of life.
final question.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's great. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
cut you off. Okay.
No, no, no.
So I really would love to know. So clearly this was a
Okay.
plot twist in your life, right? Like we didn't expect this to happen. You're starting off on your parenting journey and all of a sudden all of this starts coming your way. So tell me, how has this changed you? What have you learned? Like, how has this changed you as a person, a mom, just as an individual, Nicole?
Yeah.
And what have you
So,
learned the most about you?
oh geez. Well, that's a loaded question. Um, what I learned about myself is that I will do anything for my kids. I am a huge advocate for them, and
Yeah,
I will not stop. Um,
I love that.
I am calm and
Yeah.
nice, but I'm not naive.
Yeah.
And like don't mess with me. But I'm a lot more patient than I thought that I was.
Yeah.
And this has nothing to do with my kids. But growing up, I didn't have people in my corner. And so I've always, now you're gonna make me cry. Okay. My parents were both,
Oh, hold on. Hold on. There it is. Right before the tears.
oh look, right before
If
the
it's,
tears.
oh, good. Wipe them away. They'll be.
There is a fire emergency in the building.
I love this. I can't wait. So I have a friend who's helping to edit these videos.
Uh-huh.
And so I cannot wait for her to see this. She's going to die. I'm
Amazing.
not even going to tell her. I'm just going to send it and let her listen to it. One more. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
What do you do outside of Fastaway?
I sell metal into the automotive and aerospace industrial industry. So I'm here visiting an aerospace distributor. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You go to Detroit a lot?
I go to Detroit. I go to Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
This is so funny. The West Coast quite a bit. I don't do Denver, which makes me sad. Got to figure out a way to come see you.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
Texas,
aren't they building a huge, like,
they
aerospace
are.
safe? Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, we should kind of get that way. That'd be good. I'm sure I could figure out a way. I've got a team of like 7 people that report to me. So if they could, oh my goodness, if they could, they would have me on the road all the time. But I don't. So
Who wants that? Yeah.
No, not anymore. I used to love it, but now I've got, kids and a life at home that I actually like. Before it was like, I didn't care about it. I'd rather be gone.
Yeah.
All right, stop. Are you done? Oh, one more.
What's your friend's name that does your editing?
This is Megan. Hi, Megan.
Megan's like, why am I listening to this?
Megan's going to see like a 40-minute recording and be like, Jennifer, you never talk this long. And now she's going to know what's happened. Sorry, Megan. Oh my gosh, you got to stop. Hopefully it's done. I need to mark this when it happened so she knows. Okay, minute.
There is a fire emergency in the building.
I'll put it
here. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway.
Yeah.
Do not use the elevator.
The marketing for this is going to be this. I'm going to send you clips of like, hey, we're having a podcast. This is Nicole's first podcast, everybody.
Oh my God.
Please make it stop.
By the nearest exit
Okay,
or
hold on.
exit stairway.
I got to scarf down
big is
a
it?
salad in a minute. I know.
You might as well eat during this.
I know. I'm so sorry, Nicole.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, that sounds like
there is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevators.
Oh. How long has that been going? I thought it would be done. All right. It keeps like abruptly stopping, giving you the hope that it's done.
You are to leave the building.
It'd probably tell you this. Thank you. Your drill.
I bet they're checking all the floors or something to make sure.
Yeah.
But it's going off.
Listen, I don't know about you, but humor gets me through a lot. And this is
everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
There is a fire emergency.
I want to get your last answer out, and then I'll leave you alone.
You are to leave the building.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh.
This is the longest it's
Okay. We're good. All right, here we go. Okay. So, how has this changed you?
Okay. It has made me a more understanding and accepting person. I think that I was before, for sure. You know, but having kids of my own and seeing, you know, I don't know, not seeing, but like knowing that things aren't always what they seem, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and somebody may look at this podcast and has seen me on Touch of Stas and was like, oh my God, really? Like, I mean, I struggle every day with my kids. There's not a day that doesn't go by where it is not hard, you know. Truly, I don't think, unless I'm on vacation, like it's just not in my, you know, and my husband works a lot, like sometimes 80 to 100 times a week. Like it's just a lot on me. So, yeah, I think, you know, learning to put myself first and
General, attention Attention all guests and staff. Attention all guests and staff. This concludes the fire
This
alarm
concludes.
test. This concludes the fire alarm test. Thank you so much.
You
for
should
your
get like
I
a
want you
free
to talk.
beverage out of this.
Oh, I'm going to go downstairs.
Yeah.
Trust me, friend.
Attention all guests and staff.
This guy likes to hear
Attention all
himself talk
guests
on the
and staff.
Oh, for sure.
This
clips.
concludes the fire alarm testing.
That's
Thank
good.
you so much.
Okay, everybody heard you the first time.
He did. I thought
Chad,
we did.
get off.
Okay, I want you to.
Yeah.
I want you
Okay.
to start talking. I want you to finish that story about your family.
Oh,
so
yes.
somehow go into that.
Yes. Okay. So this has nothing to do with my kids. This is more of a personal realization. But I think, struggling with kids that need me a lot emotionally, what I learned about myself.
You're here.
Okay. And not that I had childhood trauma, but seeing what was lacking, it made things hard for me to fully know how to deal with my kids emotionally. I had to work through some things myself. There was a lot of parent guilt that I had to deal with, and because not feeling enough. And my therapist told me, he's like, Nicole, he's like, I don't think your kids feel unloved. He's like, if anything, they feel overloved. He's like, I'm not sure where that's coming from. So I just learned a lot about myself through my kids. And I think we all do, but I didn't learn how to emotionally, I didn't have that support growing up. So I had to relearn that to be there for my kids. And then tenfold because their emotions are just so big. So I feel like I can come from a different perspective and angle. And even for other humans in the world, you just, I don't know, just a different level of understanding. I think my superhero trait is that I'm a very thoughtful person. Yeah.
But what a beautiful testimony to you changing the legacy inside your family, right? You're getting, it's this cool opportunity for you to forever change the legacy for your boys and the lives that they have and all the things they're going to grow up, and they are growing up inside of a house that looks completely different. And I love that this small or big or whatever crazy event of learning a diagnosis for your children, not only has it helped you into the areas that you've talked about, but also truly helped push you into that place of being a different kind of mom that maybe you wouldn't have been, right? Because you didn't have to be. So I love that, Nicole. That's really, really special. Okay. Well, I really do appreciate that you've taken the time to talk with me today. I'm so excited for this audience to get to know you better. If they want to reach you, what's the best place that they can find you if they want to talk to you one-on-one about anything you shared?
I am on Instagram at Touch of Stass. I am also, you can find my website, touchofstass.com. I know there's a place for you to inquire. It goes straight to my inbox. You can find me at info@touchofstass.com. If you want to send me a private email, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about this. ADHD, dealing with anxiety with kids, and fashion. So
yes, you have quite the space. I love it. All right. Well, we'll be talking to you more soon. And we'll thank you again. I really do appreciate your time,
Thanks for having
Nicole.
me, Jen.